The rain had been falling steadily all evening, leaving the streets glistening with reflections of neon lights and car headlights. People hurried along the sidewalks, pulling jackets close and holding umbrellas high. Inside the small cafe tucked on a quiet corner, the atmosphere was completely different. Warm lights spilled onto the floor, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the soft aroma of baked bread and pastries. The gentle hum of conversation was punctuated by the occasional clatter of cups and the hiss of the espresso machine. It was the kind of place where people could forget the world outside for a little while. She moved through the cafe with practiced ease, balancing trays filled with cups of coffee and plates of food. Her smile was warm but not overly rehearsed, and her eyes always seemed to notice the little things: a customer struggling to open a bag, a child fumbling with a cookie, someone looking lost in thought. She knew most of the regulars by name and could remember their usual orders. But she treated every new visitor with the same genuine attention. There was a quiet strength about her, something that made people feel respected and seen. He walked in just as the door creaked open, shaking off his umbrella. He was dressed in an expensive coat, tailored and polished, and carried himself with a confidence that was almost loud enough to fill the room. His shoes shone even in the dim light, and his watch glimmered under the cafe lamps. He was the kind of person people noticed immediately, someone who clearly lived in a world of comfort and wealth. He glanced around, spotting her almost instantly. She was arranging plates on a table near the window, her hands moving with precision, her expression calm. For a moment, he simply watched, curious. There was something about the way she worked, the way she interacted with customers without seeming rushed or distracted. He stepped forward, weaving through the tables until he reached the counter. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth, almost rehearsed. "Can I get a table for one?" She looked up from the register, offering a polite smile. "Of course. Right this way." As she led him to a table by the window, he noticed the way she moved quickly but not hurried. He noticed the subtle gestures she made to make each customer feel welcome. Something about her confidence and grace intrigued him, and he felt an unfamiliar pull of interest. Once seated, he began scanning the menu, though it was clear he wasn't particularly interested in the food. She returned shortly with a glass of water and a menu. "Have you decided what you'd like?" she asked, her tone friendly but not overbearing. He smiled, leaning back in his chair. "I was thinking maybe you could help me decide. You seem to know this place well." Her smile widened slightly. "Well, our cappuccino is very popular, and the blueberry muffins just came out of the oven." "That sounds perfect," he said. "I'll have both." She jotted down the order and turned to leave, but then paused, noticing something in his expression. He looked like someone used to getting what he wanted, but also someone who might be used to having people flatter him. She shook off the thought and moved toward the kitchen, leaving him to his seat. When she returned, she brought the cappuccino and the muffin with care, placing them in front of him. She added a small note on the plate, a simple message, wishing him a good evening. He picked up the note and smiled, feeling a mixture of curiosity and amusement as he took a bite of the muffin. He couldn't help but watch her as she moved among the tables, speaking softly to each customer, offering small gestures of kindness that seemed natural rather than performed. She wasn't just serving food. She was making people feel comfortable, valued, and heard. That was something he realized money could never buy. After a moment, he called her over. "Excuse me?" he said, a little hesitantly. "Can I ask you something?" She approached, tilting her head slightly. "Of course." "What is it?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "Do you ever feel like you could do more, be more, if you didn't have to worry about money?" Her eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "I think everyone has choices, but some of those choices aren't about money. Some are about who you want to be and how you want to treat people." He blinked, momentarily taken aback. Most people he spoke to would have been flattered or tempted by the idea of wealth offering freedom. She wasn't impressed. She didn't even hesitate. She just spoke her truth. "Interesting," he said, trying to mask the surprise in his voice. "Most people would jump at a chance like that. Most people do what they think will make their life easier. I do what I think is right." For the first time in a long while, he felt a twinge of something unfamiliar. Respect? Curiosity? It was hard to name it, but it unsettled him in a way that was almost exciting. He watched as she continued to serve other customers, moving with the same calm assurance, the same quiet authority as the evening wore on. The cafe filled with the soft chatter of patrons and the occasional laugh, he found himself returning to the thought of her. Not because she was attractive, though she was, but because she seemed untouchable in a way he had never encountered before. She wasn't swayed by appearances, by wealth, or by charm. She had her own world, her own rules, and he had to admit, it fascinated him. When she brought him the bill, he left a generous tip, more than enough to cover the cost of his meal. He placed it on the table and added another envelope, neatly sealed. "For you," he said. "Consider it a token of appreciation." She looked at him calmly, reading the note inside. Then she smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Thank you. But you don't have to give me anything to show appreciation. A kind word is enough." He felt a flicker of frustration. Most people would have accepted the money without a second thought. Yet here she was, refusing it subtly, making him realize that not everything could be bought. He left the cafe that night with the rain still falling, the streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement, and her words lingering in his mind as he walked to his car. He found himself thinking not of what he could give her, but of how she made him feel. Curious, challenged, small in a way that was strangely freeing. For someone used to power and control, it was a new sensation, and it left him restless, wanting to return, to see if he could understand her world, even if he couldn't control it. Back in the cafe, she continued her work, moving from table to table, smiling, helping, listening. She had no idea how deeply she had affected a man who thought money could buy anything, and she didn't care. She simply did her job, stayed true to herself, and proved in the simplest way that character and kindness could never be purchased. The next morning, the cafe opened to a soft drizzle, and the scent of wet earth mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee. She arrived early, as always, unlocking the door and turning on the lights. The quiet hum of the espresso machine filled the empty space. She moved about the room, arranging chairs, wiping tables, and preparing for the day ahead. It was her routine, comforting and grounding, and she liked it that way. Each morning felt like a small chance to start fresh, to make a difference in the small world inside this cafe. He arrived again, dressed in a sharp suit that looked freshly pressed, his shoes polished to a shine. Today, there was no hesitation in his steps as he entered, and he scanned the room until he spotted her. She noticed him almost immediately, offering a polite nod as she carried a tray of pastries to the counter. She didn't know why he kept coming back, but she had learned to treat everyone the same. Whether regular or first-time visitor, he chose a table near the window, watching as she moved gracefully between customers. There was something about her presence that made him feel off balance. He had been used to people being impressed by his wealth, responding to his confidence. And yet she treated him with the same neutral kindness she offered everyone else. It was unfamiliar, and it piqued his curiosity even more. She approached him with a menu. "Good morning. What can I get for you today?" she asked, her tone bright but professional. He leaned back in his chair and smiled, as if he already knew the answer, but wanted to see how she would respond. "I think I'll let you choose for me," he said. "You seem to know this place better than anyone." She raised an eyebrow slightly, but didn't hesitate. "Our oatmeal is fresh this morning, and the croissants just came out of the oven. I would recommend those." "Perfect," he said. "I'll have the oatmeal and a croissant, please." She walked away. He watched her again. There was a rhythm to the way she moved, a confidence that didn't rely on showiness or attention. She was busy, yet present, always attentive to each customer. He felt a mix of admiration and frustration. It was impossible to intimidate her with money or charm. She returned with his order, placing it carefully on the table and adding a small handwritten note, wishing him a good day. He smiled at the gesture, feeling a strange warmth in a place he had never expected to feel it. He began eating but found his mind drifting back to her. Wondering why she resisted the easy path of wealth that he could offer, he decided to push a little further. "You know, most people I meet would take anything I offered without a second thought," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Why not you?" She met his gaze evenly. "I'm not most people," she said simply. "I value my work and my independence. Things like money can't change that." He felt a flicker of irritation mixed with fascination. He wasn't used to being refused, and yet her refusal didn't feel rude or confrontational. It was simply her truth, presented calmly and without apology. Most people would have been flustered, but she was steady, grounded. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Instead, he watched her continue her work, moving from table to table, chatting briefly with customers, noticing the small things that others overlooked. There was a kindness in her interactions, an authenticity that he hadn't encountered in years of business deals and social gatherings. Later, as the cafe grew busier, he noticed how she handled the rush. Orders were coming in quickly, but she never seemed hurried or stressed. She guided the other staff with quiet authority, making sure everything ran smoothly without raising her voice. He saw the respect she commanded from her coworkers, not through fear or position, but through competence and fairness. When she returned to his table to refill his coffee, he decided to ask another question. "Do you ever think about leaving this place? Doing something bigger? Something more?" he asked, genuinely curious. She smiled, a small, thoughtful expression. "Of course I think about it sometimes. I dream about opening my own bakery someday. But that doesn't mean I need help from someone else to make it happen. I'm willing to work hard to earn it on my own." He nodded slowly, impressed by her determination. Most people he had known would have jumped at the chance for a shortcut, but she was different. She believed in herself and in her own path. It was challenging for him to accept, because he was used to thinking that money could open doors that hard work alone could not. Throughout the morning, he tried different ways to impress her, complimenting her work, talking about the opportunities he could offer, even hinting at how much easier her life could be with his support. Each time, she responded with a calm, confident answer that reminded him that her values were not for sale. He began to realize that she was testing him, seeing if he could respect her choices and her independence. At one point, a customer came in looking worried, asking for help with a small emergency. She handled the situation effortlessly, calming the person down, finding a solution, and doing it all without expecting anything in return. He watched closely, realizing that this was the kind of impact she had on people through her character, her patience, and her willingness to help. By the time the morning rush slowed, he felt a strange mix of emotions. He was frustrated that he couldn't control her, intrigued by her strength, and inspired by the way she lived her life. He left the cafe that day not with a sense of victory, but with a sense of curiosity and respect. She had proven once again that money could not dictate her choices or her principles. As he walked away, he found himself thinking about her words and actions, replaying the small gestures and quiet moments that had left a lasting impression. She was a reminder that integrity and self-respect were far more powerful than wealth, and that true admiration came from recognizing and valuing those qualities in others. The cafe was quieter than usual that afternoon, the soft light from the windows casting long shadows across the tables. She moved around efficiently, stacking dishes, wiping surfaces, and checking on the few customers who had decided to escape the drizzle outside. The calmness of the space allowed her to breathe, to think about the small victories and struggles of the day. She liked these moments when the world slowed down. She could focus on her work and the people she cared about. He arrived again, pushing open the door with a polite but noticeable sense of anticipation. His presence seemed to shift the energy in the cafe. Today, he wasn't merely curious. There was determination in his eyes. She noticed him immediately and gave a nod, acknowledging him without changing her pace. She had learned by now that he was not like the usual customers. And while his wealth and confidence were obvious, he had yet to understand the limits of influence. He approached the counter. "Good afternoon," he said. "Can I have the table by the window again?" She nodded. "Of course. I'll bring your order over shortly." As he settled into his seat, he studied her quietly, watching how she interacted with the other customers. Her demeanor remained unchanged. She smiled, assisted, and conversed naturally, never allowing his presence to disturb the rhythm of her day. It was clear that she valued her independence above all else. and it intrigued him more than he expected. When she brought him a cup of coffee and a small plate of freshly baked scones, he decided it was time to test his influence more directly. "You know," he said, leaning slightly forward, "I could help you with your bakery dream. I could make it happen tomorrow if you agreed to let me guide you a little." She set the plate down carefully and met his gaze. "I appreciate the offer," she said, "but I don't need someone else to guide me. I want to earn it myself." There is satisfaction in knowing that you built something with your own hands, your own choices. He was caught off guard. Most people would have jumped at an opportunity for fast success, yet she remained firm. Her words weren't just a refusal. They were a statement of who she was. He realized that he had underestimated the strength of her character. She was grounded, confident, and entirely unwilling to compromise her principles for money or influence. He tried another approach, softer this time, hoping to appeal to her curiosity. "What if I could provide advice? Just ideas. No money, no pressure. You could still do it all yourself, but you might save some time." She smiled lightly, considering his words. "Advice is fine, but it has to come with respect for my choices. I don't want someone steering me because they think their way is better. Everyone's journey is different, and mine is mine alone." Her answer was measured and calm, yet it carried weight. He felt a strange respect growing within him, mixed with frustration that his usual methods of influence weren't working. He realized that the woman sitting before him wasn't just independent. She was self-aware, intelligent, and deeply principled. These qualities made her untouchable in a way he had rarely encountered. As the afternoon passed, a young couple came in, looking worried and hesitant. She noticed them immediately and approached with her usual warmth. "Can I help you find something?" she asked gently. They explained that they were new in town and didn't know what to order. Feeling nervous about being in an unfamiliar place, she guided them with patience, explaining the menu, recommending dishes, and even making small adjustments to suit their preferences. By the end of the interaction, they were smiling, relaxed, and grateful. He watched silently, realizing that this was another way she influenced the world, not through money, power, or authority, but through kindness, empathy, and attention. Later, as she moved to refill his coffee, he decided to test himself rather than her. "I admit," he said quietly, "I'm not used to people resisting what I offer. I usually get what I want." She poured his coffee calmly and looked him in the eye. "That's your choice," she said simply. "And it's fine. But not everyone responds the same way. Some of us value integrity over convenience, effort over shortcuts, and honesty over appearances." He felt a sudden clarity in her words. She wasn't just rejecting him or his offers. She was showing him a different perspective. A perspective where respect, effort, and authenticity mattered more than wealth or influence. It was humbling, and it made him rethink the way he approached people in general. The afternoon wore on, and the cafe gradually emptied. She cleaned the tables, restocked supplies, and took a moment to breathe. He remained at his table, sipping coffee slowly, watching her with a new sense of admiration. It was no longer curiosity alone. It was a realization that he had underestimated the power of character. Finally, he called her over. "You've proven something to me today," he said, a mixture of sincerity and humility in his voice. "It's rare to meet someone who doesn't bend for money or influence, someone who values themselves and their work so deeply." "I've been challenged in a way I haven't been in years," she smiled, a little surprised but pleased. "It's simple, really. I do what I believe is right. That's all anyone can ask for." He nodded, feeling a strange respect and fascination. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about what he could give or control, but about what he could learn. She had proven to him that influence wasn't about wealth or power. It was about integrity, respect, and staying true to oneself. As he left the cafe that day, he realized that he was changing. He was thinking differently, seeing the world from a perspective he hadn't considered before. The woman he had tried to influence had, in fact, influenced him in return. She had shown him that respect and admiration were earned through character, not money. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining and wet. He walked slowly, reflecting on the lessons he had learned and the realization that the most powerful people were often those who didn't try to be powerful at all. She had proven that money could not control her, and in doing so, she had changed the way he saw people, relationships, and life itself. The cafe was bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, and the hum of conversations had softened to a gentle murmur. She moved through the space with her usual ease, serving customers and tidying tables. But there was a lightness in her step today, a small confidence that came from knowing she was living her life on her own terms. Each interaction, each smile, each small act of kindness reinforced her sense of purpose and independence. He entered quietly, his footsteps hesitant for the first time. The usual air of certainty that followed him seemed to have softened, replaced by a quiet curiosity. He scanned the cafe until he spotted her, and their eyes met briefly. She nodded politely, returning to her work without interruption. He followed, taking a seat at his usual table by the window, trying to collect his thoughts. Today he didn't come with a plan to impress or influence. Instead, he observed, he watched how she handled the small rush of customers, how she noticed the subtle needs of each person, how she offered reassurance, a smile, or a listening ear. It was not just service, it was empathy, patience, and an innate understanding of people. He realized that all the wealth in the world could never replace that kind of influence. At one point, a young mother entered with a fussy child. The little one was clearly tired and hungry, and the mother looked frazzled. She approached them with calm authority, kneeling slightly to meet the child's eye. "Would you like a cookie?" she asked softly, producing one from a nearby plate. The child's eyes lit up. The tension in the mother's shoulders eased almost immediately. He watched silently, struck by the power of her simple act. Money could buy treats, luxury, or comfort, but it could not buy this kind of connection. The realization hit him with surprising force. Influence and respect were earned through actions, integrity and empathy, not dollars and flashy gestures. After serving the mother and child, she returned to his table with a refill of coffee. He hesitated, then spoke, his voice quieter than usual. "I've been thinking a lot since I first met you. I came here expecting to show you what I could offer, to see if money could sway you. But it's clear that it can't. You've shown me something I hadn't considered before. How character and values shape a person far more than wealth ever could." She listened carefully, placing the coffee down gently. "I'm glad you're realizing that," she said simply. "It's easy to get caught up in what money can do, but it can't replace respect, trust, or honesty. Those are earned every day in small ways." He nodded, feeling a mixture of admiration and humility. For the first time, he wasn't trying to impress or control her. He was learning, reflecting on his own actions and assumptions. She had changed the dynamic completely, proving that true strength lay in self-respect and principles. As the day went on, he noticed other moments that reinforced this lesson. A struggling artist came in, looking unsure and nervous, holding a portfolio of sketches. She greeted him warmly, asking about his work, offering constructive feedback, and encouraging him to keep pursuing his passion. She did not offer him money or favors, but her words were more powerful than any financial gift. He saw the hope and confidence she inspired in others. All without expectation or reward, he found himself observing the interactions, realizing that she had a way of influencing people not through force or persuasion, but through authenticity. Her actions spoke louder than words. Her values were evident in every gesture. And she commanded respect naturally, not through intimidation or wealth. It was a revelation for him, a lesson in humility and admiration that he had never encountered before. Later, a regular customer, an elderly man who came in every Thursday, began to complain about a minor issue with his order. She listened patiently, apologized sincerely, and corrected the mistake immediately. She didn't argue, she didn't make excuses, and she didn't make the man feel small. Instead, she treated him with dignity, respect, and care. Watching her, he realized that these were the moments that defined a person, the choices made when no one was looking, The integrity shone in small acts of service. When the rush finally subsided, she took a moment to straighten up, stacking chairs and wiping counters. He approached her, feeling an unusual humility. "I need to admit something," he said. "I've spent my life thinking I could influence people, guide them, or impress them with wealth. But you've shown me that there are things money can't buy, lessons that can't be taught through power. You've changed the way I see the world." She looked at him, her expression calm but encouraging. "That's a good realization," she said. "It's not always easy to see, especially if you've been surrounded by people who respond to money. But it's worth learning because it shapes how you treat others and how you live your life." He felt a mix of gratitude and awe. For the first time, he wasn't trying to win, to control, or to impress. He was simply listening and learning, understanding the strength and impact of her choices. She had proven, through patience, integrity, and kindness, that influence was about authenticity, not wealth. As he prepared to leave, he noticed her helping a young boy who had dropped his school bag, collecting his books and smiling warmly as she handed them back. He realized that these small, unnoticed moments were what truly mattered. She didn't need recognition or reward. Her actions were genuine, and their impact was profound. Walking out into the cool evening air, he felt a shift within himself. He had come expecting to assert power, to test her, and perhaps to gain admiration through wealth. Instead, he had been humbled, inspired, and enlightened. She had shown him the true measure of influence, respect, and human connection. She had proven once again that money could not control her, and in doing so, she had left an indelible mark on him, one that would shape his thoughts and actions for a long time to come. The streetlights reflected on the wet pavement as he walked slowly, replaying the day in his mind. He understood that he was being challenged not by confrontation or force, but by integrity, kindness, and authenticity. She had taught him a lesson that could not be bought, one that money could not influence, and one that would resonate far beyond the walls of the cafe. In proving her independence, she had proven a profound truth about life, respect, and the human spirit. The cafe was quiet that morning. With only a few early customers sipping coffee and reading newspapers, she moved around with her usual calm energy, arranging pastries and wiping tables, her mind focused on the work she loved. Every action, from pouring coffee to folding napkins, was done with care, and it made the cafe feel like a small haven for anyone who walked in. She liked it this way, simple, honest, and meaningful. He arrived again, his footsteps lighter than before, his expression thoughtful. There was no sign of the confident, commanding air he usually carried. Instead, he seemed curious, patient, and aware. He scanned the room and found her arranging cups near the counter. She glanced at him briefly, nodded politely, and continued her work. She was in her element, completely unbothered by his presence. He approached her table with a soft smile. "Good morning," he said. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." She smiled back. "Not at all." "You're welcome to sit." He settled into his usual spot by the window, and for a moment neither spoke. The soft light of the morning reflected off the wet pavement outside, and the cafe was filled with a quiet warmth. Finally, he broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot about what you've shown me these past days," he said, his voice gentle but earnest. "About independence, integrity, and the value of staying true to yourself. I came here thinking I could influence you with money, with gifts, with promises. But you've proven that respect and trust can't be bought, and it's changed the way I see people and even myself." She listened quietly, placing a small tray on the table. "I'm glad you understand," she said. "It's not always easy to see, especially when you're used to people responding to wealth or power. But the real test is how you act on what you learn. Understanding it is one thing, living it is another." He nodded, taking a slow sip of coffee. "I want to live it," he said. "I want to approach life differently, not assuming that influence comes from what I have, but from how I treat others. I think I have a lot to learn, and you've been a teacher without even trying." She smiled, genuinely touched. "That's a good start. It's all about small actions, consistency, and respect. Life isn't about shortcuts or forcing people to accept what you offer. It's about building trust, showing care, and making choices that reflect who you are. He looked at her, realizing for the first time that he had been blind in many ways. He had relied on his wealth to navigate the world, assuming it could open doors, impress people, and solve problems. But she had shown him that the most meaningful connections, the deepest respect, and the strongest influence came from honesty, integrity, and kindness. It was a lesson that went far beyond the walls of this small cafe. Throughout the morning, he observed her again, noticing how she interacted with every customer. A young man who seemed nervous about ordering was guided patiently, offered recommendations, and thanked warmly when he made his choice. An older woman was helped with her groceries, and the two shared a small laugh over a minor mishap. She didn't act to impress or gain favor. Her actions were sincere. The effect was profound. He realized that her world was one where dignity, patience, and empathy mattered more than wealth, appearances, or social power. And in that realization, he found himself changed. He no longer wanted to control or influence her. Instead, he wanted to understand, respect, and perhaps, if she allowed, be part of the same world she lived in, a world grounded in principles and humanity. As the morning rush slowed, he decided to speak openly. "I need to admit something," he said. "I've tried to impress you, to offer things I thought you wanted, thinking that would earn your respect or attention. But I see now that respect isn't given lightly, and it certainly isn't bought. It's earned through who you are every day. And you've earned it, not by trying, but simply by being yourself." She looked at him, her expression calm but reflective. "Thank you for saying that. It's not easy to admit mistakes or assumptions, especially when you've been used to a certain way of doing things. But recognizing it is the first step to change," he nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had come to the cafe expecting to leave with admiration in his own hands. But instead, he left with a lesson etched into his heart. He understood that his power, his wealth, and his influence were meaningless if they were not accompanied by integrity, empathy, and respect. Later, she helped a little girl who had dropped her ice cream, comforting her, laughing softly, and offering a new treat without a thought of payment or reward. He watched, realizing that these small moments defined her character. They were far more valuable than any amount of money, any grand gesture, or any attempt to impress. They revealed the depth of her humanity and the quiet strength of her choices. As he prepared to leave, he finally spoke again. "I want to thank you," he said. "Not for anything you've given me, but for showing me how to see the world differently. For proving that money cannot control what is truly important. You've changed my perspective in a way that nothing else ever could." She smiled softly, her eyes warm. "That's all I could hope for. Understanding and respect are far more valuable than wealth. I'm glad you see that now." He left the cafe that morning with a feeling he had never expected: humility, admiration, and a quiet sense of hope. He realized that the most powerful people were often those who needed no power at all, who influenced not through wealth, force, or authority, but through honesty, kindness, and steadfast principles. She had proven that money could not control her, and in doing so, she had inspired him to reconsider how he would approach life, relationships, and respect. From that day forward, the sun shone through breaks in the clouds as he walked down the street, reflecting on the lessons learned. He had come expecting to influence and impress, but he left inspired, humbled, and motivated to act differently. She had taught him, without words or lectures, that the truest influence came from character, authenticity, and the courage to stay true to oneself. And as he turned the corner, he knew that the encounter had changed him forever, leaving a mark far deeper than any money or gift ever could. Days passed after their last conversation, and the cafe settled into its usual rhythm. She moved through the space with her steady, confident energy, greeting familiar customers and assisting new ones. The soft clink of cups, the aroma of coffee, and the quiet hum of conversation formed the backdrop of her world. A world she had shaped with patience, skill, and integrity. Every action she took reflected her values and the quiet strength she carried within herself. He returned again, this time with a different presence. There was no sense of trying to impress or control. Instead, there was a calm observation, an attentiveness that was new for him. He watched her work with a mixture of admiration and contemplation, noting how naturally she influenced the people around her. Her actions were not grandiose or calculated. They were simple, genuine, and profoundly impactful. By the window, he noticed a young man at the counter struggling to carry a tray of drinks. She immediately stepped forward, offering a hand and a smile, guiding him carefully and encouragingly. He watched the interaction quietly, realizing that her influence came not from authority, wealth, or force, but from genuine care and attention. This lesson was becoming clearer to him with every passing day. He decided to speak, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "I've been reflecting a lot on what you've shown me," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. "It's made me reconsider how I approach people, how I measure influence, and even how I see myself. I came here expecting to lead, to impress, to test you, but instead, I've been learning." She smiled softly, pouring his coffee. "Learning is always valuable," she said. "It's one thing to gain knowledge, but another to understand and apply it. True growth comes from reflection and action." Throughout the morning, he observed her interactions with various customers. A nervous young woman came in, clearly anxious about a job interview. She offered encouragement, suggested a choice of beverage to calm her nerves, and listened patiently as the woman shared her concerns. The effect was immediate. The young woman left with a smile, feeling supported and more confident. He realized that this was the essence of her influence, the kind that could not be purchased or commanded. Later, an elderly couple entered, looking tired and frail. She greeted them warmly, helping them find a comfortable seat and adjusting their order to suit their needs. Her actions were attentive but unassuming, simple gestures that carried immense weight. He found himself reflecting on his own life, recognizing that despite all his wealth and power, he often overlooked the small, meaningful ways to connect with people. As the cafe grew busier, he noticed how she handled the rush with poise and patience. Orders came in rapidly, and customers had questions, complaints, and requests. Yet she navigated each situation with calm efficiency, never showing frustration, never raising her voice. Her competence commanded respect without demanding it. A silent testament to her character and dedication, he decided to engage her in a deeper conversation. "You have a way of influencing people that I've never seen before," he said. "It's not about authority or money. It's something else entirely. How do you do it?" She paused briefly, considering her words. "It's simple," she said. "I treat people as human beings, not as transactions. I listen, I pay attention, I act with honesty and kindness. That's it. Influence comes naturally when you respect others and yourself." He nodded, absorbing her words. There was a humility in her approach, a grounded wisdom that he had never encountered in his world. Her lessons were becoming more apparent not as lectures, but as lived experiences, demonstrated through everyday actions and interactions. Throughout the day, he continued to watch her, noticing the subtle ways she impacted the people around her. A young boy spilled his drink, and she calmly cleaned it up while reassuring him that accidents happen. A tired mother received help with her bags, and she did so without hesitation or expectation. Each act was small, yet collectively, it created a profound sense of care and respect. By mid-afternoon, he felt a growing admiration that went beyond simple respect. He understood that she had created a world where dignity, empathy, and integrity mattered more than material wealth or status. And in witnessing this, he felt challenged to change himself, to reevaluate the way he interacted with others, and to understand the true value of influence. He spoke again, his voice quiet but earnest. "You've taught me more than I expected. Not just about people, but about myself. I realize now that I've often relied on my wealth to navigate life, assuming it could open doors and command respect. But you've shown me that true respect is earned, not given, and that influence comes from who you are, not what you have." She looked at him with calm encouragement. "That's a hard lesson for many people to learn," she said, "but it's valuable. Recognizing it is the first step. Living it consistently is the challenge. As the day came to a close, he realized that he no longer approached her with the intent to impress or control. Instead, he approached with humility, curiosity, and a genuine desire to understand and learn. He had been changed by her example, inspired by her independence and integrity, and challenged by the way she navigated her world with honesty and care. When he finally left the cafe, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow on the wet streets. He walked slowly, reflecting on the lessons of the day, realizing that the most powerful influence was not money, status, or authority, but the quiet strength of character and integrity. She had proven, again and again, that money could not control her, and in doing so, she had left a lasting impression on him, a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. He knew that he would never look at wealth or power the same way again. He understood now that respect and admiration were not commodities to be bought, but gifts earned through consistent kindness, honesty, and empathy. And he realized that she, simply by being herself, had taught him more about life, influence, and human connection than anyone else ever had.